Every ounce of muscle you gain should be making you stronger. I'm Kaizzad Capadia, and this is the Neulife Masterclass of Muscle. Why is this called as a deadlift? Okay, where does the name come from? Many people talk about the fact that the bar is dead on the floor. Dead on it's already dead. It doesn't have life. It's lifeless. So it's not dead on the floor, but we do deload it on the floor. Completely rested on the floor before picking it up again. The word deadlift comes from the fact that any movement that is done with no flexion at the elbow joint. You saw he wasn't using his arms. His arms were only hooks, and he was lifting it with his entire body. Right?
Bend in the elbow.
So the small muscles of the arms were not limiting factors in the amount of weight that he can lift. We're going to do another exercise later on called as a bento row, where we're going to use the small muscles of the arms as well to lift the object up. The amount of weight you can do there is restricted by the strength of your biceps. Here, you are basically you're causing this not to be a factor in the amount of weight that you can lift, and you're allowing your entire body, your big torso muscles and your legs and your hips to basically lift the weight up, and your arms are only working as conduits, as hooks.
Keep at the bar.
So when there is no movement at the elbow joint and you lift a weight, that is a dead movement. Okay, that's a dead movement. And the dead movements also allow for a lot of weight to be lifted. And when a lot of weight is being lifted, one more thing that becomes a problem is that the weight doesn't stay in your hands. So when you lift, the weight rolls off. The grip becomes a problem. The torso, hip and legs have tremendous amount of strength to lift, but that strength has to be matched with the strength of your grip. No matter how strong your grip is, if proportionately the body is also getting stronger, the body will always be stronger at lifting than how much you can lift with your grip. How much you can hold on to. But since there is no movement at the elbow, what we do is we use what is called as an alternate dead grip. It's called as a dead grip because it can be used only in dead movements. And what are dead movements? Movements at which there is no movement at the elbow. Okay? So basically,
you can't do this.
One palm is supinated, one palm is pronated. Now, I just recently in my Master Trainers batch made people understand the significance of the dead grip. And we don't have time here to do that experiment, but I can safely tell you that weights that just don't come off the rack, I made them do it on the rack. So I made them go up and weight slowly and steadily. I put one plate, two plates. There were girls who could not pick up 100 kilos, the strong girls. What would happen is the moment they would pick it up, the fingers would open up. The moment they would pick it up, the fingers would open up. Then I made them use the dead grip. Up the bloody bars in their hands, nicely and securely. And they could hold that for 10 seconds. That's how much of a difference. It's not only
just a grip makes.
It's not only farak, it's a huge difference. You can lift so much more if you use the alternative grip. And it works on a very simple principle. If this is unlocking, it's tightening this grip. If this is unlocking, tightens this grip. So both cancel each other out. And the bar stays in your hand for a much longer time. A heavier weight stays in your hand. So that is why you saw him use a alternate dead grip. So now we know why this is called as a deadlift. There's another exercise that we do only for the glutes, where you saw him flexing his knees and extending his knees. That movement is done without any movement at the knee joint. And that's called as a stiff-legged deadlift. Okay, so that's another exercise. There's another movement, which also we will be seeing in the later episodes, the shrug. The shrug also is done by the torso muscles without any flexion at the elbow joint. And hence, though it's not called as a deadlift, it is a dead movement. It falls under the category of dead movements, which is why you can use an alternate dead grip even in the shrugs. Okay. Not shoulder shrugs, shrugs. Shrugs is for the trapezius, and trapezius is more of part of the back than the shoulders. It surrounds the shoulder girdle. It forms what is called the shoulder girdle, but it's definitely a pulling muscle belonging to the back. Now I want Clinton to show you all three kinds that could qualify as a deadlift, but I'll tell you why only one of them actually qualifies to be the deadlift. The first one that we saw right now was already the deadlift. I'm going to have these three versions done back to back. So the first one will be with a deload, second one will be touch and go, Okay, and the third one will be not touching the floor at all. So just do that. Watch. This is what you all saw the first time. Hip hinge more. Okay. Second version. Light touch and up. 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 Last one. Up. Okay. Third version. Without touching the floor. Okay. And up. Many people call this the Romanian deadlift. That's it.
Not touching it.
Not touching it. There's also this notion that very tall people probably will not be able to touch the plates down. But no matter how tall you are, with correct biomechanics, everybody is able to put the plate down on the floor. Now, I call them versions, but that doesn't mean all are correct. The third version I said is popularly called as Romanian deadlift. I don't like these countries' names being put as prefixes for exercises, Romanian this and Russian this and Bulgarian this, because finally an exercise needs to make sense. And instead of having country names, I like the fact that the exercise is described by the joint actions. Now, all of these are deadlifts, okay? But the kind of deadlift that we propagate and the kind of deadlift that will have the most amount of carryover onto day-to-day life would be the deadlift with what we call as a deload, where the bar is rested on the floor completely. The body literally disengages from the weight, again contracts, tightens up and lifts it. Now, what is the advantage to that? Actually, there is one advantage that we get from an eccentric contraction, okay? That we don't get from doing an exercise purely from the concentric. Let's compare the squat and the deadlift. The squat starts with the eccentric, whereas the deadlift starts with the concentric. Okay, is that difference clear? Right. So now, with the squat, imagine yourself, if all of you all watching this show, if all of you are squatting, whatever weight that you actually squat for about, say, 5 reps. Okay? Challenging weight for 5 reps. So imagine that weight on your shoulder. Imagine yourself doing a straight 5-rep set. Now imagine if I were to keep the bar on the power cage wrestling pins, down below at this position, tell you to get underneath the bar at the bottom of a squat, and then lift and stand up. You'll feel that the weight weighs a lot more, or it takes a lot more effort to lift that weight off. Let's assume that you were to do a 1-rep max. So let's assume that 315 pounds is your 1-rep max. So you get the bar off the rack, 315 pounds, you squat down and you stand up with a lot of effort. Genuine 1-rep max. And you put the bar back on the rack. That same genuine 1-rep max, you got 1 eccentric and 1 concentric. Now we cancel out the eccentric. We set the bar at the bottom of the squat. And we tell you to get inside the bar, under the bar, and lift that 1-rep max for only 1 concentric. You're not going to be able to fire. So why is it so tough?
Why? Yeah.
The bench press is a very common exercise that a lift that almost everybody does. Okay, so imagine the bench press. You take it off the rack. You have the eccentric first, followed by the concentric. So a very challenging weight that you can take only for 1 rep, your maximum weight. Let me rest it on your chest and tell you to press up without the eccentric. The weight will feel almost twice as heavier. So what is the eccentric doing? How is it giving you strength?
Just for people who have not seen the first episode,
right?
Eccentric is towards gravity.
Yeah, towards gravity.
And concentric is against gravity.
Against gravity. Moving up. Sorry, concentric is when the muscle is shortening to contract. And under contraction, the muscle lengthens. That's the eccentric. So this is lengthening of the muscle. This is shortening of the muscle. Whenever the weight is going towards the floor, many people think of it as a relaxation phase. That this is the actual exercise and this is the relaxation phase of the exercise. It's not. In fact, lowering the bar down and not allowing the bar to crush your chest is a lot of work for the body. Okay? Without that eccentric control, if somebody's really training heavy, he'll break his ribs straight off. correct? So now what is this eccentric doing? We found that in the squat and in the bench press, you remove the eccentric and start from the concentric and the weight suddenly feels way heavier. So what is the eccentric doing? Okay, whenever a muscle lengthens at a high velocity, there are sensors inside the muscles called as muscle spindles. Okay, right. So these muscle spindles, they've got only one job, to relay information to the CNS about the length of the muscle, how much it is lengthening, and at what speed it is lengthening. Now this basically causes the CNS to give a kind of a contraction to the muscle. Why does it contract the muscle? Because it doesn't want it to lengthen further to prevent some kind of a tear or an avulsion from happening, right? So you've got tendons at both ends, you've got muscle spindles inside the belly of the muscle. The muscle lengthens, suddenly the muscle spindles send a message saying the muscle is lengthening. And for protection, the CNS gives the order to contract. We use this contraction to our advantage and we can push back much better. A simple jump. Supposing I make you sit like this for a while and then tell you to jump. If I make you sit like this for a while and tell you to jump, you will jump a certain height for the vertical jump. But if I tell you jump, what are you going to do?
You first go down
and up.
Jump up again.
And there's no gap. So what you're doing is you're lengthening the muscle first and then pushing
that
up.
Reflex to
Using that. And it's called as a stretch shortening cycle or the stretch reflex. First shot. Okay, so the stretch reflex definitely gives you a lot of power. And it is part of functional training, so to speak, or it is something that is used in day-to-day life as well. But it is never used in day-to-day life when you're picking up an object from the floor. Remember, you're going to pick up an object that's already lying on the floor. You're not going to be taking an object from a height, like a rack, and then putting it down and then picking it up for what? So obviously, you're going to be picking an object that's already lying on the floor. And that removes the eccentric advantage. And you want to get stronger and stronger at lifting the object from the floor without the advantage of the stretch shortening cycle. Now, the three versions that you saw, to think that the other versions would provide a much better hypertrophy benefit and this would provide a much more functional benefit, again, that's hypertrophy basically can be caused by any load.
Anything that is stressing.
Any load. All I want to encourage people or motivate people or inspire people to do is, as they are hypertrophying, I want them to become that much more functionally stronger in day-to-day life. If I'm training a cricketer, for that matter, I'm just using cricket because it's India. So if I'm using a cricketer and I'm training him for what we call as general physical preparedness, and I start using these movements, I want him to be able to hit the ball harder, run after the ball faster, maybe jump up higher to catch, maybe run between wickets faster, bowl faster with more speed. You get it? All of those markers have to go up, performance markers have to go up. And what do we see most of our athletes doing? Unfortunately, not guided properly. They sit on machines and do movements that don't really have, they might get stronger within the four walls of the gym, but it does not carry over onto their performance, strength performance in sports. So, as I said, hypertrophy remaining constant, or the benefits to hypertrophy remaining constant. Along with that, why would you say no to becoming better at lifting? Simple. Becoming better at utilizing your strength.
Not just bigger, but stronger. Really stronger.
Really stronger. And there are expectations from people. Today, just digressing a bit, I know it's about the deadlift, but it's important for me to say this. And I'm sure the episodes are going to be shorter and shorter as we go by because all these things will be taken care of. No, whenever I talk about a carryover, there's always a young boy seeing the video saying, but what if I want hypertrophy? But what if hypertrophy is more important to me? What if I just want to get bigger? Well, you are going to get bigger. And that's why even I compete. I train the way I teach. And I compete in bodybuilding because I want people to know that you can be a bodybuilder, a very successful bodybuilder. By doing this, you're not going to compromise hypertrophy. Now the second version that you saw him just going for a click and up, without really. Here he was getting the advantage of the stretch reflex. Of course, he was getting the advantage of the stretch reflex on the second rep and the third rep.
The first was the only pure deadlift.
In fact, during the time when K11 was not teaching the deload, at that time, I don't know if the viewers know, but we have a very active Facebook page. So it's good that Clinton's there right now because there was a big argument on the Facebook page. And one point that Clinton made a long time back was how can you explain the fact that your second repetition is easier than the first. And that's true.
Yeah, it is.
When you click and go, at that time, if you can get the bar up on the first rep, maybe it's damn tough and it looks like a 1 RM when you're lifting it. But if you can get the bar up on the first rep, you're bound to get the second one. If you do that, click and go. Okay, so what's wrong with that?
The second time you reflex.
Nothing wrong with that. But second time you're using a stretch reflex. Now if I were to do 5 repetitions with the deadlift, I want all 5 without the stretch reflex. And that kind of volume without the stretch reflex really makes me extremely efficient at lifting a weight off the floor. I want to get better and better. So I don't want the stretch reflex is not there on the first rep, but I don't want the stretch reflex on the second. I don't want the stretch reflex on the third. And that is why I deload. If you don't want the deload, or if you want the stretch reflex, then you can even take the bar off a rack and then start doing your deadlifts. The third version, which obviously is called as the Romanian deadlift, so to speak, is again not going all the way down to the floor. And again, your erector spinae will hypertrophy, but it will hypertrophy even when you deload. But this not putting an object down on the floor completely, or saying that I don't have the mobility, or not even trying for the mobility of putting the object down on the floor, is again against strength performance. So I would rather do an exercise that is going to give me hypertrophy in any case. Of course, the exercise by itself doesn't give hypertrophy, the lift by itself doesn't give hypertrophy. It needs to be coupled with the other 2 legs of the tripod, which is nutrition and recovery. But your bodybuilder look, this will serve the purpose for your bodybuilder look as long as you have bodybuilding nutrition, as long as you're leading a bodybuilding lifestyle.
No matter how you train, you still need to have your nutrition and rest in place.
Which is why it's again so important for proponents of true, genuine strength training to look good, to look muscular.